Okay, just able to unmute. Kate Brown, if you're there, are you able to see all the participants?
Yes, I am.
It looks like all the school committee members are here. There's a lot to most. Just want to make sure everyone got over. I think it looks good.
The only one I don't see is Sheila, but she might be on a different page.
Yeah.
I will contact Miss Ellsworth. Oh, there she is. She just entered.
Okay, great. Okay, then we can start the meeting. If everyone would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I just want to say that we will start with public comment. But I do want to say that we will be having, in light of the governor's announcement today, and also just because there's some new information and updates that we want to share with the community and that I know the superintendent does, we're going to be having another meeting this Thursday that will just focus on reopening. So we'll be dedicating it to that, just so that everybody knows we'll have that dialogue on Thursday evening. We have to push it a little bit later. So it looks like at the moment it will be an 8 p.m. meeting. And we hope you all can join us. With that being said, we'll move on to public comment.
All right. I'm guessing you're handing the baton to me.
I think I see Jen McDonald.
Okay, so you may want to remind people, or do you want me to lead that, Chairperson Schofield?
Sure. The one thing I'm not sure of is if I'm seeing them in order. So I just want to make sure that I'm calling on people as they raise their hand. So if it's easy enough, Kate, and then if you want to hand the baton back over to me, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the public comment. In Zoom, it's a little different than it would be in person. So we just ask that you raise your Zoom hand, and it's a little icon that is near your name. And once you raise your hand, we will call on you. I believe that it goes in a list, so we are going down a list that we have as hosts and co-hosts that we see. And we ask that you try to keep your comments to a limit of 3 minutes as it listed. And we will, when we get close to the limit, we will ask Madam Chair about the timing and go from there. So I believe the first is Jen McDonald. If our tech hosts can help, I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer McDonald. I am a third grade teacher at Hugh Cole. This is my 20th year teaching in the Bristol Warren Regional School District. With all the new information today from the governor and Dr. Bromage, we believe that we need to hit the pause button and rethink some aspects of the reopening as Portsmouth and other districts in the state have decided to do. They are reopening with full distance learning, which gives them the time to come up with a safer and better plan. We also believe we need feedback from the building inspections before we can make any educated decisions. We are most concerned with the ventilation issues in the building, as ventilation is the key to safety. We have questions about ventilation in classrooms, bathrooms, and hallways. Once we have the answers to these questions, we can work together to successfully and safely reopen schools. And hopefully, as Ms. Field said, we can continue to discuss this later in the week. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person I have on the list is Michelle Way de Silva.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michelle Way de Silva. I am one of the Bristol Warren Education Association co-presidents. I am also a Bristol resident. I have had both my kids go through Bristol Warren schools. I am very passionate about what happens in our community, not just because I am part of our union leadership, but also because obviously I'm a teacher and also a community member. I have been teaching at Kickmute Middle School, science and math. I really basically only been teaching math for the past 12 years, coming up on my 25th year in the district though. So I am here representing BWEA leadership, and I know that we made our statement, Brian Chittister said in the last school committee meeting that our position is that we should open in full distance learning and then gradually in phases, like they opened up the state, we should open in phases as far as what's going to happen next. So that we take it slowly, we can make changes along the way, make adjustments until we can get to that point where we can be, full in person. I know that the governor spoke today, and she actually spoke about giving her blessing, if you will, that, starting gradually and working up is an all right thing to do. I know that that was a concern for a while that school committees were, holding back on. Should we jump right in, or should we, what to do? And if school committees kind of went rogue, as they said, would there be any ramifications, which it doesn't appear to be. So as you know, I introduced myself as someone that's a leader in our school community. And as a leader, I just want to point out that you take a responsibility on for everybody. And when I say everybody, I'm not just talking about our teachers and our members, but our community, first of all, our school community, our district community at large. So of course the teachers, the TAs, but then, we start students are, that's why we're here. That's why all of us are here, is because of our children and our students. But then, that has a bigger impact on, they go home, their parents, their extended families, and of course our community as a whole. And that's where my concern is, and our concern is the effects on our community. Should we go immediately, jump right in, full in person, to the effects that could happen? Because those kids, they're not just in school, they go home. Many of our families in our communities either live in multi-generational homes, or they go home and they stay with grandparents or aunts, uncles, etc. after school. So you can see how it spreads into, it could potentially, should one of our kids or more of our kids contract COVID, it can spread very easily throughout our community. Gina, the governor, has made numerous comments that, people will get sick, teachers will get sick, children will get sick, and we'll deal with it when it comes. But that is problematic in of itself, because if you're saying that it's acceptable for people to get sick, then you're also saying that it's acceptable for people to die. Because while everyone who gets, contracts COVID won't die, the statistics are there. So statistics, math, I'm a math teacher, one of my favorite things. So I have been watching the numbers, and today I actually went onto the CDC website and pulled some numbers that I'd like to share with you. First of all, one of the things that actually shocks me when I went in there is that they have the death rate by state. And Rhode Island is actually number 6 in our country, which was shocking to me. Number 6 in the country. While we're always bragging about how great Rhode Island's doing, and I'm not saying we're not, number 6 in the country is pretty high for mortality rate per 100,000 people. then you might recall Betsy DeVoe, and the number still stands as of now, they have not changed it, that only, as Betsy DeVoe put it, 0.0016% of our children will die from COVID. Okay, so if you take that math and you multiply that, you take the percent of the children potentially to die in our country, 15,000 children. 50 states, that's 300 approximately per state. You say Rhode Island's small, how bad can it be? Well, in the way that we see it is even one death is too many, okay? I actually used all their metrics, their math to figure out age-wise, and statistically, using the statistics that are on the CDC website, one teacher will die statistically, as will one student. And I ask you if that's okay, because I don't think it is. And again, that's our members. That's BWEA members. So that's about a little more than half of the staff of the Bristol Warren Regional School District. So we're talking about maybe 2. Is that okay? I don't think any of us are going to volunteer to be that 1 or be that 2 or volunteer our children. None of our kids are expendable, not that 1. And if you think it can't happen here, you might want to remember, those of you that have been living in Bristol Warren for a good length of time, it was just 11 years ago. It can happen here. A child, very healthy, 12 years old, when H1N1 came through, died. Like I said, I don't think any of our lives are expendable. I'm not willing to take the chances. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want it on my watch. I don't want it on our watch. I don't think any of our teachers, I don't think anybody wants that. And the only way that we can prevent that is to start out distance learning and take it very slowly so that we can do everything we possibly can to protect our staff, our teachers, but most importantly, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. I believe the next person in line is Christina Tompkinson.
Good evening. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Christina Tompkinson, and I am a Bristol resident. I am a 5th grade teacher at Rockwell School, and I'm entering my 5th year teaching in the district. I'm here to speak to you about the safety of our schools for our students and staff. Currently, Rockwell School has the highest number of in-person learners. On September 14th, there will be 21 students who will arrive into my 5th grade classroom. That is only one of the 12 classrooms at Rockwell. If you can, for a moment, think about walking into my classroom. There's a desk right near the door. Each desk is spaced out so that desks are 6 feet apart on center of each chair. Now imagine remaining in that seat all day, eating lunch and having specials there as well. All the tables have been removed except for one small table. The easel is gone as well because there just isn't enough room for all of the desks. At the front of the classroom, the desks are so close to the board that there is roughly 2.5 feet for the teacher, me, between the board and the student's desk. This does not allow the teacher, myself, the recommended 6-foot social distance. Ask yourself, does this sound like an environment that is conducive to learning for all? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
I believe, oh, I lost one. Kirsten Towers, did you? Let me just find her. Did
Hello,
I?
am I unmuted?
Yep, you're unmuted.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I would wait till Thursday, but I'm not sure I'm able to attend on Thursday. My name is Kirsten Towers, and I've been an English teacher at Mount Hope High School for over 20 years. I love my job, I love the purple and white, and I especially love my students. Like everyone here, I wish we didn't have to deal with COVID-19, but we do. Like everyone here, I'd prefer to be in my classroom, having lively conversations about the rhetorical impact of Lincoln's use of anaphora in the Gettysburg Address as I move about the room to check on students. I'd rather have my students digging into passages of Othello in in-person groups, desks in units, heads huddled up, to consider how Shakespeare's presentation of a heroic and loyal officer as a perennial outsider might be viewed today. I'd like to see their in-person maskless skits and enactments of their reunion of characters from Lord of the Flies. I'd like to have them engaged in Socratic seminars, sitting in a circle. But we do have to deal with this deadly virus. We do have to adjust to potentially save lives. In March, we did that, shifting to this brave new world of distance learning. I get that it's not ideal, we all do, but it did have some high points. I had students who rarely spoke in in-person class, talking more in virtual class. The work turned in by my students was overall of better quality than it had been. Perhaps that was because they didn't have much else to do, I get that. I found students more likely to revise as well, and in writing, that is where the real growth arises. Of course, it was not preferable to in-person school, but it wasn't all bad either. Though like most teachers, I'm aspirational, I find it hard to imagine that the hybrid model proposed for the high school will be better than the virtual model. Somehow we are assuming with no evidence that students will be better off socially, emotionally, and academically. They'll come to school twice a week in alternating pattern. They'll be in rigid rows, which is not educationally ideal, we know. They will be masked. They will be expected to stay in their spots, no transition into groups or to partner work. Meanwhile, their teachers will be standing behind a line at the front of the room, teaching both the masked and distant students in the room, as well as the students who are at home. Attending to both groups, masked and shielded, seems like it would do a disservice to both. I'm not even confident that they'll be able to hear or I'll be able to hear them. And the at-home students will be hearing, if they can, us through the muffler of mask and shield and computer. At least with virtual, they had our faces, expressions, our humanness. Of course, we'll all rise, do the best we can, but how can this be good for our kids? How can this be better than really full virtual class? Returning Mount Hope High School kids will be saddened, I'm sure, to see the sanctuary that was the library, bookshelves covered in plastic, movable furniture, couches, conversation areas all gone. In their place, carefully spaced classroom desks, all facing the same direction. Lunch will not be a social event. And what will they do in passing time? Where will they be in the 10 minutes? How will we keep them distant? How will the custodial staff possibly clean all the rooms in those 10 minutes several times a day? High school students are enlivening. I love their heightened sense of right and wrong, their passion. They're not, however, famous for having a sense of their own mortality. Many are risk-driven. We're sending the kids into unsafe space and asking them to do it all as directed all the time. They won't always. That's a given. Governor Raimondo said today that indoor crowds are the surest way to spread the disease. He notes a cap of groups at 15. At Mount Hope, we have 18 desks set up in each room. With the teacher, of course, that's 19 potentially per room. We're rotating them through as many as 5 groups of 18 in a room on a given day, a different 18. With a vaccine, ideally, this threat will end. It is temporary. The potentially debilitating impact of COVID-19 might not be. Death is, of course, permanent. I hope we aren't distracted by all the planning and the preparation and the details. I hope we keep in mind the gravity of the moment. My own children have graduated from high school, but were they still in school, my husband and I would opt for full distance learning. We would do it for their safety, for the safety of the family, and for the safety of the community. I hope our community will consider using full distance learning until it is truly safe to return. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Yes, thank you. I do not see any other hands raised. Oh, never mind. There is one that just came up, Miss Shannon Gray.
Hi. So my daughter is a third grader at Cole Andrews, and I really wasn't sure if I was going to speak because I am also a teacher. But I just want to say that while I agree that full distance learning is what is best for the majority of children, I want to speak on behalf of special education students who very much need to be in person. So if the district does go full distance learning, I just hope that they take into account how difficult that was for the students who needed a lot of amount of services and weren't necessarily getting them through no fault of the teachers, but just because we as teachers were thrown into a disaster and we made the best of what we had. So if distance learning is what Bristol Warren goes with, please, please, please consider the need of learners. And sorry that I'm not the same thing you are, my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
I do not see any more hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone. I look forward to continuing this conversation on Thursday. And that agenda will be out tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing your thoughts and concerns with us. And I will now move on to asking for a motion to seal tonight's executive session minutes. Motion made by John. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. And I have to read some tiny writing. All items under this part of the agenda are considered to be routine by the school committee and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items unless a committee member requests, in which event the items will be withdrawn from the general order of business and considered in the normal sequence on the agenda. So before we vote on the consent agenda, I will be pulling C as it does not apply. So we are voting on the consent agenda with only A and B, no C.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Marge, seconded by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We will now move on to superintendent's recommendations and issues.
Recommendation S 2020-26, that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent and supported by the Budget and Facilities Subcommittee, approve the FY20 line item budget adjustments.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Marge, seconded by Brian. Discussion?
So, yeah, I'll kick this
Brian?
off. And I don't know, Dr. Bryce, are you gonna share the screen, or is somebody gonna share the file? Do we need anybody? Okay, so I want to start off by saying thank you to Mrs. Ellsworth and Mrs. McBride for their, they met with the district and really helped craft what I think is a good document, a nice detailed document. The first page that you can see there is our summary page. It pretty much goes through every object code, and that's kind of how everything is broken out. So you've got 51,000 series, which is employee salaries, and 52,000 is employee compensation benefits, and then they break down accordingly. So on the second tab under transfers, it provides a listing of the reductions in the line item and where increases occurred. So for instance, I know it's small on your screen. It's very small on my little MacBook, but for instance, the 51,115 for salary substitutes, that amount was adjusted down by 35,305. And you can see there that 51,306, 51,401, 51,131, and 51,132 were all the is where that money went. So there was an additional 25,000 for vacation payoff, an additional 10,000 for stipend, differential pay, and department head increase of $5. So I think the document is very thorough, and you can even go to the detail tab, and it provides an explanation of why we were able to save money in certain object codes and why we required additional money in others. I will say that I think we realized, and we discussed this at the subcommittee meeting on Thursday, that we need some process improvements here. I think we're gonna implement those. So in keeping with the policy, any line item adjustments over $10,000 require immediate notification to the chair and the treasurer in writing, and then they need to be approved at the next business meeting. So moving forward, line item adjustments will be part of the monthly information that is provided to the committee, similar to what we provided with a dashboard. And of course, if there are any line item adjustments over the $10,000 per policy, the full school committee will need to vote on those and approve that adjustment. So again, so the transfers under the transfers tab, you can see what those all are. Again, I want to thank Mrs. Ellsworth and Mrs. McBride and the district staff for really putting together a detailed report. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? I'm not sure I can see everybody. Hold on. In case I miss you and I'm not seeing your hand, feel free to just say out loud that you would like to talk. No comments? No questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
hands.
Okay, so then we can vote on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Second recommendation? Oh, John, you have to unmute.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Recommendation S 2020-27, that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent and supported by the Budget and Facilities Subcommittee, approve the preliminary fiscal year 21 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Again, moved by Marge, seconded by Brian. Discussion.
So again, I'm gonna thank everyone that had input into this. I know at the last full school committee meeting, there was some concern regarding the level of detail that the preliminary budget had. Typically at this time of the year or even earlier, we would have just about everything done and worked out, with the exception of the state aid. And even now, I still think we don't have the full state aid nailed down. We do have what we were, I think, given back in March. And then we're even hearing that there may be departments having to take an additional 10% or 15% reduction. So we don't know what that necessarily means. But again, I appreciate everybody that had input into this. Dr. Bryce and his team put together what I think is a detailed preliminary, again, it's preliminary budget. We will have to have a final budget approved by the end of September per policy. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more then. But Dr. Bryce, I see you have it up, if you want to step through the summary slide, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. So as you mentioned, the team really worked to nail down the preliminary budget based on steps that were taken as we were finalizing the line item budget adjustments. It is important to for members on the call as well as members of the community to know that we are still very concerned about state funding. The state has not solidified their budget. And as a matter of fact, what we believe has happened, if you can take a look, is that what the state has done is actually reduce state aid by some amount of dollars, and then given us those funds back in COVID-19 relief funds or stabilization funds that we would be able to charge against for things related to COVID, like increased use of technology, increased cleaning supplies, some temporary staff, things like that. It is going to be important that our delegation understands that we need to be held harmless as it relates to state aid, so that next year they don't come back and they base our state aid on whatever number that we finally get this year. In terms of additional information for revenue, one of the things that we had to do, and I just highlighted it in blue, the district reappropriation of fund balance. In order for the revenue to work out, we actually need to add almost $1.2 million in fund balance as revenue for this year. And that is a substantial increase, but that increase will allow us to be able to handle all of the things that are within our budget. And so it's important for members of the school committee to understand that number. We have additional other information where we talk about COVID-19 relief funds, and we really were able to work to make sure that those things were included in the budget. And at the end, our budget equals 0, which is exactly what you need. Revenues versus expenditures, including debt service and things like that.
Dr. Bryce, I think it's important to point out for not only the committee, but for the public as well, the impact that the state aid reduction has. So while Dr. Bryce mentioned that the state aid was reduced in preliminarily, it appears from about 1.4, they gave us back just a little over $1 million in CARES Act funding. But that money is tied to specific expenses. So there are restrictions on that money. The state took away $1.4 million of funding that could be used for anything within the district and within the general operating budget, and then gave us money specifically that was tied to COVID relief or stabilization or expenses for COVID. So that does kind of tie our hands a little bit with that 1.067 million that the state did give us.
That is correct. There are some restrictions tied to those dollars.
So I can't see with the shared screen all of the, okay, there we go. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the preliminary budget? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on, Mr. Saviano. Just have to unmute again, John. John, you're still muted. There you go.
Recommendation S, 2020-28, that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent and supported by the Budget and Facility Subcommittee, approve the quotes for services to repair the Mount Hope High School tennis courts.
So moved.
So, second,
You're muted, Aaron.
Gotcha. Motion made by Brian and seconded by Marge. Marge, you have your hand up?
I do.
Okay.
What's the warranty on that? I
So,
didn't,
Marge, they came back and we have updated a Rev 2.
I got that. I still didn't see the number of years.
3 years.
Years.
All right.
So just for the folks that weren't at the Budget and Facility Subcommittee meeting last Thursday, as everyone knows, there is only a handful of sports within the fall that are being considered by the state to take place. Most of them are non-contact, and I think there's 2 or 3. Tennis is one of them. Cross country, I believe, is another. There might be one other one. But at this point in time, our Mount Hope High School women's tennis team is the state champs. They are the state champs for women's tennis, which is fantastic. The problem is our courts aren't up to snuff and we are not allowed to hold matches. We have 6 courts. We have 3 that don't require some level of repair, and there are 3 that do require repair. And the state requires that you have a minimum of 4 courts available in order to hold a match. So after some community members, parents of the tennis team, and the tennis team's captain emailed the school committee, we investigated what it would take to get those repaired. We have made a recommendation based on the superintendent's recommendation to go with JG Coffee Company after the bids were let and we received the bids back. We think that this is the most economical choice. It provides a good warranty, and we believe that they are able to complete the project in time for women's tennis to take place. So if everybody can see online, what our recommendation was for expansion joint cracks, crack repair option 1, which is a patch binder, mix and gravel, once cured, sand and apply armor crack repair system, and then 1 coat of acrylic resurfacer and 2 coats of color over the repairs. That has a 3-year warranty. And then for structural cracks, again, we're going with option 1 to apply the armor crack and repair system. And then they offered a free repair for the cracks between the tennis court along the fence. And that is just a mixture of the patch binder. And once cured, they apply the 2 coats of acrylic over the repairs. Unfortunately, those will re-crack after a freeze and thaw cycle. So we expect to only get 1 year out of that. And that was why we were asking them about their armor crack repair warranty, because we anticipated that it would be more than a 1-year repair or 1-year warranty. And it in fact is. And so that is the recommendation before the school committee tonight for a total amount of $14,872.50. One of the other things that we will, as a budget and facility subcommittee, is look at putting in a line item for in our budget for these types of repairs moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes.
Brian,
yes.
how many bids came in?
3.
Okay.
And the highest, I think we can say the high. I think we talked about the highest was 48,000 and change. And then this one, there was one that was about 20. And then this one had a range of options, but we selected the what we thought was the best option with a warranty with this armor crack coming in just under 15. And again, part of that was that they were able to complete the job in time, whereas the other 2 companies, there was no guarantees that they could complete the work in time for the season.
And when does the season start?
When school-
The season will begin once the Rhode Island Interscholastic League makes a final decision. But we expect that practice may begin sometime toward the end of September, matches shortly thereafter. So mid to end of September, matches shortly thereafter.
Does anyone else, Mr. Ramos?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick follow-ups, Mr. Bradshaw. One was in relation to the other two bids. There was, I believe there was discussion, and just to refresh my recollection at the budget subcommittee meeting, that there wasn't a longer term warranty available on the basis of a different process being used by one of the more expensive bids. Is my recollection on that right?
That is true. I believe I don't recall what the warranty was for the next highest, but the bid that came in at 48,000 said right on there that it was no more than 2 years.
Yeah.
For warranty.
And I just noticed on the warranty information that is now being provided on this bid, it says it's a warranty against, I think, widening, not lengthening. Do you have an understanding as to what that means? Or does anybody?
So,
well, I'm an electrical engineer, not a structural engineer, but I would expect that just like you would do with any kind of concrete repair, they're gonna mill it out and then fill in that crack, but they can't predict if that crack is going to propagate lengthwise any further, and they would have to come back and do other patch repair. But they would guarantee that, as I understand it, that their compound will not force the crack wider.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. John, you just need to unmute. There you go.
Recommendation S 2020-29, that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the amended 2020-2021 school year calendar.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Made by Adam, seconded by Brian. Discussion. Dr. Bryce, if you wouldn't mind kicking this one off,
Yep.
that would be great.
So thank you, Madam Chairperson. The state initially put out a calendar prior to the governor's decision to move the start date from August 31st to September the 14th. Once that decision was made, RIDE, the Rhode Island Department of Education, amended their proposed school calendar to include additional professional development days, which you see right here. And so what they really did was they took part of the 180 days, they reduced from 180 to what is in effect 172 straight instructional days. What they said we could do, all districts could do for the 8 other days that they were going to use for professional development, was that they could be a combination professional development and student instructional day. And so the first 3 of those days are September the 9th, 10th, and 11th. But we also, as a district, have a contract that has a number of professional development days and those were 5-hour days. So what we have done is we have worked to identify those days as well as an orientation day for our district. And so we are bringing staff in to buildings on the 2nd and the 3rd of this week, as well as on the 28th of September and the 13th of May. And those will be the professional development days. 3 of those will be the professional development day. The 4th day, which is actually September the 2nd, will be the date of orientation, 6 3/4 hours. And instead of having another 5-hour day, we believe that we will have covered the amount of material in the number of hours in 3 days that we previously would have done in 4. What else is important about this calendar is that we actually identified all of what the state calls PD or distance learning days. And they are identified in orange. And it's usually, they're all Mondays. One's in October, November, January, March, and May. So those were the other 5 of the state's professional development days. What's really important for us is that as we did this, we also did some housekeeping. And part of the housekeeping that we did was to make sure that we identified for 12-month staff those dates that were leave days for 10-month staff, but not leave days for 12-month staff unless 12-month staff took they actually used vacation days. And so we've been able to identify by those by adding things like an asterisk. So I'll give you, if you look at the calendar, the 7th, which is Labor Day, is a leave day for everybody in the district. But the 8th, which is shaded in the same color pink, is a leave day for 10-month employees, but it requires the use of vacation leave for all 12-month staff. And so that type of housekeeping is actually going to do one thing. It's going to either have folks at work on those days, or they're going to use their leave time so that long-term, just from a vacation payout, staff will actually have used those days. They will not hold on to those days. It's just another way to ensure that staff are using the days that the school committee has provided them in their contracts. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Madam Chairperson.
Dr. Brace, I just have one question. There's that note at the bottom.
Oh, yep, sorry. So I know that we're going to discuss this on Thursday, but in the conversations that school administration, myself, my leadership team have had with BWEA leaders, and we also had a couple of calls with Mount Hope High School, their leadership team, and some teacher leaders. There was the recognition that our high school students that will be fully distance learning for the first quarter needed additional time and check-in with teachers. And as a result, we are making Mondays for the high school students virtual support days. So these are days where there will not be direct instruction by teachers. Teachers will have a schedule, they'll set up a schedule, and their role at the high school on that day, and everybody will be physically in the building. Their role that day will be to provide support and additional touch points for all of the distance learning students. And once they've covered all of their distance learning students, then if there are additional students that need support, they can fit them into the schedule, they would do that as well. That was a good catch.
Does anyone else have any questions? I can't see everyone, so just go ahead and speak out if you do.
Madam Chair, this is Brian Bradshaw. Just a quick question. Knowing that we're bumping up against the end of the fiscal year with the 25th, I'm assuming, and I would take it that the assumption moving forward is that our students are going to carry their supplies back and forth each day, so that in the event that there is a snow day, we're turning on a dime and everybody is going to be able to engage in distance learning. Is that a fair assumption that we can expect no snow days with only 3 days of additional time in the fiscal year before we run into FY22?
The governor was very clear that, and the Commissioner of Education, that traditional snow days should be a thing of the past. And so we have worked to ensure that all students K through 12 will have a Chromebook. Our secondary students, middle school and high school, they were already bringing their Chromebooks back and forth from home to school and school to home on a daily basis. We have not required that for all of our elementary students. The first step that we're doing is we're assigning all of our elementary students a Chromebook. And then once we have the carrying cases for all of them, they will be assigned the carrying cases. We just don't know if it makes sense for the expectation to be that elementary students are going to carry Chromebooks back and forth to school every single day. In the event that we believe a weather event is forecast, that is when we would expect that the early elementary students would take their Chromebooks home so that they would be ready in the event of that type of situation. Older elementary students, once we get all of the Chromebooks, once we assign them, we do believe that we will start to see those students carrying their Chromebooks home at night and back to school during the day. But it is something that we still are working through.
And thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Want me to turn it on? No, you want to tell me what it's
Any other questions or comments? I still can't see all your faces, so just speak up. Marge,
Yeah,
was that you?
no, all I can see is the calendar. And
Okay.
your-
I'm in the same boat. Thanks. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions about the amended calendar? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So now I believe I'm just getting back to my agenda. We can move on to the subcommittee reports and initiatives, and we'll start with Carly for policy and curriculum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. At this juncture, we don't have our next policy and curriculum subcommittee meeting scheduled just yet. I'm assuming we'll be working on this later this week, perhaps after we have another discussion as a full school committee about what the needs are for our district. But hopefully that'll be scheduled soon. As of now, the subcommittee is purely just kind of in a holding pattern and is hoping to support the district in whatever means and way we can. Thank you.
Brian, budget and facilities.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Normally, our next budget and facilities subcommittee meeting would be on September 21st. We will tentatively schedule it for that date, but of course, that is subject to change, again, based on the needs of the committee and the subcommittee, and when we need to hold that. And that's about all I've got.
Thanks, Brian. Adam, personnel and contract negotiations.
Nothing of note or immediate action to report. There have been, I would say, productive discussions going on between the administration and the BWEA to address some of the unique issues associated with the reopening of school related to COVID-19. But there are no meetings currently scheduled for the Personnel Contract Negotiation Subcommittee. I expect that once we get to the point of getting past September 14th, it'll be another time again for the Personnel and Contract Negotiation Subcommittee to start getting into the nitty-gritty of some additional work on that front.
Thank you. And while you're talking, do you want to cover wellness?
Carly and I are a team. Right now, we're a team without a lot to report on wellness.
Agreed.
other than working to be supportive as we've heard on several occasions. One of the things in the current environment that is really helpful around making education in person safe is to try and provide as many opportunities to be outside as possible. Carly and myself and other partners, both on the Wellness Committee and in the community, are continuing to work on ways to be supportive and provide additional options for the district to provide additional outdoor spaces and opportunities to supplement our ability to provide education in person in one of the more safe settings. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Carly.
I don't. Thank you very much. You were
Thanks.
very thorough in your explanation. But yes, we are continuing to work and kind of wait and speak with other community partners and do our best to have as many healthy, safe learning environments for our students as possible.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to everyone for coming. I hope to see you on Thursday, and I would like a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion made by John Saviano, seconded by Marge. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Have a great night.